Greetings, dear viewer. There are buildings whose appearance is already terrifying. Things that can't be explained logically happen in these buildings. It is scary to be here even in the daytime, and researchers of paranormal phenomena only shrug their hands. Note that some of the buildings discussed in this publication served as the basis for the filming of horror films. So, we present to your attention the top 10 most terrible buildings in the world. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe and like our video. In the meantime, we are starting. House of Despair, Guanajuato. The so-called House of Despair in Mexico has a dark history associated with a famous serial killer. House of Despair is a historical place in the Mexican city of Guanajuato. In the late 19th and early 20th century, this house, dating back to the 18th century, was the site of a series of murders committed by Tadeo Fulgencio Mejia. The killer was obsessed with communicating with his dead wife. According to local residents, the house is constantly experiencing paranormal phenomena, and sometimes you can even hear the screams of victims. The Winchester Mystery House in San Jose. They make horror movies about this mansion. It inspired Stephen King, but its real story is much more interesting than fiction. What makes this house interesting is not just its scale. The 160 rooms and 40 staircases of this house are headed by one big mystery. 38 years in a row, the widow of a rich husband built this building. An incredible number of rooms and corridors often lead nowhere. Everything was done to ensure that uninvited guests were lost in the house, so that they did not overtake her. These guests are ghosts. Some biographers of the widow Winchester claim that the version about ghosts is false and the widow was just looking for something to do that would help to forget about the deceased relatives. But the very structure of the house indicates the mysticism inherent in its creator. An attentive guest will notice how the number 13 is repeated over and over in the internal device. Almost every staircase has this number of steps. The small dining room has exactly 13 windows, and many stained glass windows consist of 13 parts. Belmez Mansion. The Faces of Elms are one of the most mysterious paranormal phenomena of the 20th century. This story began in a private house in Spain in 1971, when its residents began to notice the appearance of mysterious faces on the floor of their own kitchen. Mystical Faces of Elms Crepota, face, riddle, long post. The first report that a person's face appeared on the kitchen floor of their own home came from Maria Gomez Camara on August 23, 1971. Her husband, Juan Pereira, along with their son, destroyed the image that day, breaking the cement floor with a pickaxe, and later laying a new one in its place. But the story didn't end there. After a while, the face reappeared on the floor, but this time the cement was cut off and handed over for research. Soon, many people in the district and across the country learned about the house where the mysterious images appear. Until now, parapsychologists believe that this phenomenon has become the most important paranormal phenomenon of the 20th century, as it has been repeatedly documented and recorded on video and photographic equipment. Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel. This hotel is located in Alberta, Canada. The appearance of the hotel is not its biggest oddity. According to rumors, it is not just inhabited by ghosts, but even has a place where they live. That is why you will never find the entrance to room 873. This castle hotel can easily be attributed to the category of those mystical and mysterious places where you can clearly hear the sound of footsteps along the corridor or giggling behind the wall in the silence of the night. Feel an incomprehensible movement of the air, which makes your skin crawl, or catch a movement out of the corner of your eye when entering a room or passing by a mirror. Sometimes it seems that someone is watching you, and sometimes you realize that it is not just seeming. Year after year, guests embellish and pass on these mystical stories from mouth to mouth, and something strange continues to happen in the walls of the Fairmont Banff Springs Hotel. Waverly Hills Health Resort. During the years of a terrible illness, the sanatorium worked as intended. Doctors used barbaric methods of treatment with open windows. Snow-covered patients lost their ribs and became test subjects, soon dying a painful death. At the moment, the abandoned sanatorium is one of the creepy places with paranormal phenomena. But the most paranormal place in Waverly Hills was named the 502nd room of the 5th floor, where most often there were collisions with otherworldly entities. In 1928, a senior nurse was found hanging from a lamp cord in this room. It is said that she could not bear all that was happening and a deep depression forced her to take her own life. In 1932, another nurse, also working in room 502, fell from the roof. The exact motives for these suicides are unknown, but rumors say that this room is inhabited by an ancient evil. However, the abandoned sanatorium does not like uninvited guests at all. Rainham Hall. The Old English castle of Rainham Hall, located in the county of Norfolk, has a bad reputation. According to legend, within the walls of the family estate of the Marquises of Towshend lives the ghost of a woman, whom the locals call the Brown Lady. During her lifetime, the Brown Lady was known as Dorothy Townsend. The woman was married to the owner of Rainham Hall and died in the early 18th century under unknown circumstances. Since then, she has been roaming the estate in the guise of a ghost. At the beginning of the 19th century, the regent George IV, while on the estate, met with a ghost. Through the dream, the man was enveloped by the feeling that he was being watched. Georg opened his eyes and was horrified to see the transparent figure of a woman in a robe of brown brocade. The creature's skin was pale, its hair disheveled, and its eye sockets empty. The regent left Rainham Hall that night, vowing never to return. Myrtle Plantation. Advertised as one of America's most frequented homes, the plantation is home to 12 ghosts. Photo of a courtyard and gazebo on the Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana. American Butler. It is not often reported that there were 10 murders in the house, but historical records indicate only the murder of William Winter, the owner of the house, whom we mentioned above. According to the stories, his ghost walks on the stairs of the house and always stops at the 17th step. The fact is that Winter was just shot on the porch and tried to climb up the stairs for help, but collapsed dead on the 17th step. The most famous urban legend is about the slave Chloe, owned by Clark and Sarah Woodruff. According to one story, Chloe often eavesdropped on the couple's conversations through keyholes. After she was caught, Clark cut off Chloe's ear and she began wearing a green turban to hide the injury. One day, Chloe baked a cake containing an extract of the leaves of the oleander are extremely poisonous. She had planned to treat Clark and Sarah, but things didn't go according to plan. Only Sarah and her 2 daughters ate the cake, and all died of the poison. Chloe was then allegedly hanged and thrown into the Mississippi River. Some believe that the woman in the green turban is still roaming. St. John's Hospital. St. John's Hospital was founded in 1852 in Lincolnshire and is intended for the poor who suffer from mental disorders. Cruel methods of treatment and unsanitary conditions became the fate of any poor person who fell within the walls of the hospital, because most often the mentally ill were alone or relatives simply did not visit them. Patients sometimes complained about the blazing flames and other oddities that were invisible to the hospital staff. But any complaint only confirmed the diagnosis made by doctors, and patients were treated with enhanced treatment, which often only worsened their condition. Pain, hopelessness, and indifference ruled this place for several decades, but in 1989, for numerous violations, the St. John Clinic was closed. Some movers who moved furniture and equipment out of the building complained of sudden headaches and a constant sense of anxiety. Today, the abandoned hospital has retained the presence of mysticism. Several times, bystanders watched flames shoot out of its windows and called the fire brigade. Firefighters who arrived at the scene found no signs of fire, and some of them only noted that while they searched the gloomy floors for fire, they thought that someone was watching them. The DeFeo House. Ronald DeFeo Jr. did not immediately confess to the brutal murder of the family. However, when he was pinned down, the killer began to tell the truth and could not stop until he told all the shocking details about how he grabbed a rifle, began to run around the rooms, and in a mad rush to shoot the sleeping relatives. The psychopath swore that he heard voices that made him take up arms and execute relatives. A year and a month after the murder of the owners, House 112 was purchased by the lads, who hastily left the house after 28 days, complaining of strange voices and other paranormal things. So began the famous Amityville horror story, which continues to this day, has collected 12 film and television projects, the extreme of which is a horror film, The Horror of Amityville, Awakening 2017, in which Ed and Lorraine Warren conduct their paranormal investigation. Crenshaw House. Landowner and slaver John Hart Crenshaw leased salt deposits from the state of Illinois. Salt was an important component of the early American economy at the time. Crenshaw was also known for selling stolen Negroes from the northern states, where slavery was officially prohibited, to the southern states, where slave labor was heavily used. All this was ironically called the Reverse Underground Railroad, in contrast to the Underground Railroad that transported Negroes from the southern slave states to the north and to Canada. Crenshaw was twice accused of kidnappings, in the 1820s and in 1842, but was never found guilty. He sold the house in 1863. In 1966, two officers who took part in the Vietnam War ran in horror away from the Crenshaw mansion, frightened by strange sounds coming from the attic. In 1961, the owner of the house banned people from entering the villa at night. In 1976, a local TV reporter, David Rogers, ventured to stay in a haunted house for the night, despite numerous reports of ghosts allegedly living in the attic. In the morning, Rogers told of what he had seen and heard in the Crenshaw house that night: the sounds of men, women, and children crying, shadows wandering in the dark. In 2003, the Sisk family sold the house to the state of Illinois. Since 1996, the Crenshaw mansion has been closed to visitors, due to the state authorities' desire to preserve the house as part of the historical past of the United States.
By the end of our video, if our video is interesting, please click like button. Thanks for watching. Our staff tries hard on every video, so please subscribe to the channel and write a comment. We look forward to seeing you again, our friends.